Edexcel Economics, Paper 1, Microeconomics Paper, 2022 in this scenario, and let's get started with it. I don't know why it didn't say 2022 at the start of it, but you just have to trust me. But it also does say it there. But yeah, let's get started. So section A, and let's go straight to the question. Ceteris paribus. Okay, that's a bit of a weird thing to say, but the most likely consequence of the above data is that Disney Plus will experience an increase in its... So what this means is assuming ceteris paribus. Of course, you should know what ceteris paribus means. All other things held constant whilst one variable changes. Okay, let's see what is given us in this table. So Disney Plus, nothing really there. And then what's it given us in the rest of it? So Disney Plus subscribers in millions and chronologically increasing in time, and also the subscribers are increasing in millions. So it's asking us what is the most likely consequence of Disney Plus subscribers increasing in millions. I'll probably, because we're assuming ceteris paribus as well, something like an increase in profits, increase in revenue, increase in sales, something like that. So let's see what options we have. We have fixed costs, income elasticity of demand, price elasticity of demand, revenue. So right now I can already tell the answer is revenue, but why is it not the rest of them? So firstly, fixed costs. Of course, what are fixed costs? Remember, fixed costs do not change with output, therefore it cannot actually be fixed costs. Maybe it's variable costs, it could have been. But then income elasticity and price elasticity demand, we just basically have no information about any of that, so it's not going to be that. But yeah, the answer here would be D, and let's move on to the next question. So this is a 1 mark question. Whenever there's multiple choice, there's usually a 4 marker after it, and I haven't actually looked at this paper, so let's see if there is. And look at that. This is why I've done too many past papers, spent too much time in A-level economics. I can just already predict questions. Okay, well, looks like a very nice question. Supply and demand, draw a supply and demand diagram to show the likely effect of a change in the number of subscribers on the market equilibrium for Disney Plus services. So always start with these questions, labeling the axes, so price and quantity. That should be a mark there. Now, what's happening? What do we say? Again, we've already analysed the table. It's much faster. We can become very efficient at this. So, Disney Plus subscribers are obviously increasing from 10 to 50 million. What does that mean? That is obviously affecting the demand side of things. So, demand is increasing for Disney Plus services. So, that is what we need to show. How do you show an increase in demand? You shift demand out from D, so demand, to demand plus 1. Oh, and that is not the best line I've drawn. So, demand plus 1, and again it's talking about the market equilibrium price, etc. So let's just label this up, and this is all we would need. So PE to now P1, I might add a little annotation there to show the increase in price, then QE to now Q1. So we have overall an increase in price and an increase in quantity demanded, and that might be the easiest 4 marks you ever get. But just make sure the question is specifically on market equilibriums. So I'm just going to label up the market equilibriums. In the exam, I'll probably do something like this: original equilibrium, after equilibrium. But you don't actually have to do that. But yeah, that is enough for 4 marks. And let's move on to question 2. Let's hope all questions are as easy as this. But okay, so let's go straight to the question. 2 marks. It looks like a calculate question. The price of sweetened drinks increases by 5%. So straight away, I haven't even read the question. It sounded like a PED question. Ceteris paribus, calculate the percentage change. Okay, no, I'm just wrong. So calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded for sweetened drink, and I'm advised to show my workings. So we have a PED here and we have a XED here. So just for revision sake for you guys, I am going to write out the PED formula. It's percentage change, triangle me change by the way. Percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So that actually is a PED question. What information are we given here? We're given here that the PED for sweetened drinks is 1.37 and the price of sweetened drinks increases 5%, so it's given us 2 of those values, and it's basically asking us to work out that. It's asking us to work out the percentage change in quantity demanded, and it also says here, calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded. Now, that is some very simple maths, and let's work this out. How do you do that? You do 1.37 times 5, and that would give us, no, mental maths is not great, so I'll have to use a calculator, and that is apparently 6.85, and I'll do minus, and remember the main thing here, always include the units, because it is a percentage, since if you look at this, it's percentage change in quantity demanded, so it's minus 6.5%. Okay, so that is 2 marks bagged, and let's move on to the next question. It looks similar, but I'm guessing this is XED. But the price of sweetened drinks increases by 5%. Calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded. Okay, the reason why I guess it's XED, because firstly, we're given an XED value, and so we're probably going to have to use it. And also now on second reading of the question, it says the price of sweetened drinks versus the quantity demanded of bottled water. So that is very sneaky and challenging question. And of course, for your guys' revision sake, so when I write this out, what is the XCD formula? You try to tell me before I write it. So it's percentage change in quantity demanded for good A, so that is whatever good that is, divided by percentage change in percentage in price for good B. So now let's just import the data we already have. So we already have the XCD value, which is here, which is 0.63. We're given the price of sweetened drinks. So the price of sweetened drink, that aligns with that part of the formula. So price of sweetened drinks increases 5%, so pretty much same thing again. This is why with section A, if you're not getting 100%, I would have reflect and put a bit more work in, because it is very, very easy. So 0.63 times 5, using a calculator, that would give us a value of 3.15, and again it is a percentage, so make sure you include the percentage sign. That is 4 marks back there. So let's have a shot at this. Using the data on page 4, which of the following is most likely? So this is about obviously the XCD part of things, and this by the PED. Let's start with the PED. So a decrease in the price of sweetened drinks. Let me just quickly remind myself what the PED of sweetened drinks are. So it's minus 1.37. So 1.37 of course means the demand for this good is elastic. So again, little reminder, between 0 and 1 is inelastic, and anything greater than 1 is elastic. So now let's put in the scenario. So decrease in the price of sweetened drinks. What do we expect from a good with elastic demand? Of course, it's a decrease in price. Consumers are very responsive, so there's going to be an increase in revenue since there's going to be more sales, etc, etc. So we can rule out A and B, but now let's grab the XCD value, which is plus 0.63. So with regards to XCD, since it is a positive value, this would be a substitute. So basically anything above 0 with regards to XCD substitutes, and as you can imagine, anything below 0 is a complement. So we have a substitute here, which means the answer must be, therefore, D, because it's not a complement and it's not any of these two, so it must therefore be D. And yeah, it does fit the bill. So an increase in the price, an increase in the revenue, and sweetened drinks and bottled drinks are substitutes. And honestly, even if you knew nothing about elastic and inelastic demand, you probably guess that by just common knowledge. So if there's a decrease in price, there's probably going to be an increase in revenue, because people know that when prices decrease, you want to buy more. And sweetened drinks and bottled drinks, it's not the hardest one to work out though. This, and that is 5 out of 5 marks for this question 2. Been a very easy section here so far, and let's move on to the next question. Ooh, we've got a lot of information here. Let's see what's asking us. Draw an externality diagram, this is a good one, to show the likely impact of sewage discharge on the local tourist industry. Sewage discharge, and let me just have a read of this. Pollution. Okay, so it's going to be negative. So obviously for Edexcel, technically there are only 2 externality diagrams you should know, which are positive and negative. If you watch YouTubers that are not Edexcel specific, they will have taught you 4 diagrams, but on the Edexcel spec you only need to know a negative production externality diagram and a positive externality diagram. So let's get started with this negative externality diagram. So cost slash benefit on this axis, and quantity on the y-axis, or output, whatever you want to call it. So let's get started with this question. So supply equals marginal private costs, of course, and then let's draw a demand curve, which is demand equals marginal private benefit, and since it's a negative production externality diagram, marginal private benefit is also equal to marginal social benefit. And what about it makes it a negative production externality diagram or a negative externality diagram? It is the marginal social cost curve is above. And now the main thing in an essay question, the main way you're going to pick up the marks is the labels and using the labels. But here, obviously, you need to label it up just for the marks. And so, what does this point represent? This point, of course, represents the market equilibrium. So this is QE, I'm going to label this. Then MSE, what does this point now represent? This point represents the socially efficient equilibrium. So what does the gap between QSE and QE represent? It represents the overproduction. So since this is talking about pollution, it's talking about, I haven't actually even read the extract, but lots of pollution, I think fish, water, people are drinking polluted water. The social cost of society is higher than the private cost. So the reason we produce at the market equilibrium, and we don't need to know this is just revising, you don't need to know this for this question specifically, but the reason we produce at the market equilibrium is due to when private producers produce, when firms produce, they only think about their private costs and not external cost to society. And remember, what is social cost formula? Social cost is external costs plus private costs. So since private firms, they're selfish, they only think about their own costs and not the cost to society, they overproduce. This is where the government intervened. They sometimes entered the market with a tax. Why? Because this is a too high level of production, and they want to push production back to QSE, which is obviously the socially efficient equilibrium. And what does this gap, what does the overproduction between QE and QSE cause? It causes welfare loss. Now, my main rule for welfare loss, to make sure you never mess it up, you go from the market to equilibrium, which is where supply equals demand, and you go up or down to your social curve. And of course, in this scenario, the social curve is above, so you go from there just to there, and that is now your welfare loss triangle. And then for this diagram, I usually don't even draw them on, but you don't even need it for the marks here, but you can draw on the prices. And don't worry if you've learned the MSE curve like this. It's classic where Edexcel teachers sometimes teach it like it's completely fine for this question. Just make sure you get your welfare losses right, label the curves right, and everything is still rosy. Okay, now moving on to the multiple choice question. So which of the following is the most likely effect of a 180k fine? Now this means we should probably read the stimulus because I have no idea what this 180k fine. So a company that provides drinking water, treats water waste, been fined 180,000. What? And I'm just gonna quickly go back and read the option. What is the most likely effect of the 180,000 fine? I haven't actually even read the stimulus, but a fine is probably not going to increase the market failure. It'll probably reduce the market failure. Increase profits for water company. Again, a fine is very likely not to do that. Reduce external costs, I would agree. Reduce government failure, maybe, but I'll probably not agree as much, so I'm going to read the stimulus to make sure it's reduce external costs. Yeah, so the charge related to illegal discharge. It polluted the river. So that basically what they're doing, they're putting a fine on the firm, so it is definitely external costs. Is that the classic, when you put a tax in this diagram, you can show it by MPC plus tax. Obviously I'm just illustrating this for explaining purposes. What does this mean? It means that the private cost is now at the same point at the socially efficient equilibrium, meaning there's no overproduction in society. But yeah, the answer for that multiple choice question would be C. Okay, moving on to the next question. Has been quite an easy section A, so I expect these two questions to be quite hard. Okay, nice little game theory. It looks like, so draw a game theory, a two firm, two outcome game theory model to show why chicken suppliers may have colluded. Okay, so let's get started with this question. This is usually quite a confusing question for quite a lot of students, and just game theory, it confuses quite a lot of people, but let's try digging deep and make this as simple as possible for you. But okay, so they received a 107.9 million fine, but I don't think that's going to be very relevant in the game theory diagram. But then this looks like it's going to be very relevant. So they gained Pilgrim's Pride, I think that's the name, is thought to gain at least 361 million in total revenue from the collusion. So since they're colluding, they're probably saying a high price, and that is what I'm going to put for my figure for the high price. So let's sketch out this game theory diagram. Okay, so it's probably not going to be the cleanest diagram, but it should do the job. Okay, and that should be good enough. Box that off. Okay, so anything like that will do. So of course in this we will have revenue, whatever is in, they don't really care, but that's meant to be $1. Okay, so revenue in dollars, and then always remember the revenue, and that's going to be in dollars. Let's pretend that's $1. And then we have high price, and in the question it has not given us any like indication of what high price is. You probably set whatever, you probably make it up, but I don't think it's not going to be needed for the marks basically. So high prices here, and then obviously in the other columns low prices. And who was colluding? It was Tyson Foods. So I'm going to put Pilgrim's Pride actually. Pilgrim's Pride and Tyson Foods. So obviously you need to roll these firms on to show how the game theory diagram works. But always remember, so the firm on the left is going to represent the price on the left as well, and the firm on top is going to represent the price on the right. So obviously the high price was in terms of revenue, they were getting 361 million. So I'm just going to write 361 here, and that's if they both selected the high price, and that's of course if both firms colluded, which of course as the question stem states they did collude. And then I'm just going to go with the low price. Obviously this is the Nash equilibrium. For this question you just have to make up figures, like this is just as long as your low price is lower than your high price and it's the same value, that's all you're going to need for the mark. Now let's fill in this box. Let's think about it. If Pilgrim's Pride set a low price, and if you look at Tyson's Food, they have a high price. So Pilgrim's Pride have a low price, Tyson's Food still have that high price. So basically Pilgrim's Pride have cheated. What is likely to happen? So they undercut this firm, and remember the game theory represents oligopolistic firms. What's likely to happen to the revenue for Pilgrim's Pride? The revenue for Pilgrim's Pride is likely to increase, and the revenue for Tyson Foods is likely to decrease. So we might have something like 400 million, and then for Tyson Foods something like 100 million. And for this box, of course, same scenario. It's just that in this scenario, Tyson Foods cheats instead of Pilgrim's Pride, 400 not 4,000. Does, of course, oligopolistic market consumers substitute away. Tyson Foods gains a lot of that quantity demanded. So that is enough for 4 marks. We'll explain the mark breakdown just so you know, if a question comes up on this in the future, you know basically what the marks are for. So of course, the firm on the left represents the prices on the left, whereas the firm on the top represents the prices on the right. Then obviously the high price, you need to make sure these are equal since they would all both be making the same revenue. Same with the low price. The low price of course needs to be lower than the high price. And of course this is what some of you may know as the Nash equilibrium. And then in terms of when one of them undercuts, so these 2 boxes, of course one of them needs to be worse off and one of them needs to be better off in terms of numbers when one of them cheats and undercuts. Okay, and that is 4 out of 4 marks there, and that's the 4 marker done. Like I said, this section here was way too easy, so threw in a bit of a harder question, but let's now move on to the next question. So multiple choice, which one of the following is most closely associated with tacit collusion? So tacit collusion, a really easy way to remember, of course, there's tacit and then there's overt collusion. The way I advise students to remember it is tacit collusion is tactical, it's not illegal basically, whereas overt collusion is the illegal one. So let's see the one that's most closely associated with tacit collusion. Overt sharing of information, of course, tacit, that's overt collusion. Predatory pricing, now predatory pricing, and the next one is price wars. I'll probably not class these as associated with tacit collusion, as predatory pricing and price wars, with predatory pricing, you're literally trying to force the firm out the market. You price lower than like your ABC, for example. On price wars, you're desperately undercutting the other firm to try to steal their market share. And that's, of course, with collusion, you're working together. So it would not be them two either. Unspoken agreements, like I said, it's tactical. If it was spoken agreements, that would obviously be overt since you're just, you're colluding. But unspoken agreements is definitely tactical, and it's tacit collusion. And that's one of the main features of tacit collusion, which is unspoken agreements. But yeah, so this would be D. And that is question 4 done, and had to get 5 out of 5 on question 4. And let's move on to question 5. Starting with a multiple choice. Which of the following best describes the merger of the makers of Fiat cars and Vauxhall cars? So this is actually a really good question for revision, so let's get started. What is backwards vertical integration? This is where you merge with a supplier. So for example, Fiat or like Vauxhall cars is going to merge with a supplier. An example of this, so we talk about cars, is like, for example, a sort of car company merging with a tyres company. So why do firms do this? As they have more control over their raw materials. For example, car manufacturers cannot produce cars without tyres, and if the tyre company is really slow, they might just find it better just to buy the tyre company, spend a lot of money on it, make it more efficient, and therefore they have control over almost the entire production process. Forward vertical integration then is merging with a distributor. So we're talking about cars. This might be a car company merging with like Auto Trader, like Vauxhall merging with like Auto Trader, or like car showrooms, which help sell the cars. Or an even better example is a farmer buying like a supermarket chain. So now, of course, a farmer makes the goods, but then also he now owns the distribution. Horizontal integration, just like a classic merger, like 302, or the classic ones you hear, where it's basically merging with your competition, merging with companies, firms at the same stage of the production process. And that, of course, does describe what's happening here. Fiat and Vauxhall, they both make cars, and they are merging. But then lastly, we do have organic growth, which is just basically when a firm grows and expands. But then lastly, of course, it's wrong, but internal growth, it is when a firm just grows internally and expands using its own resources. Moving on to the next question, so we have, it's a 2-mark explain question. Explain one type of internal economy scale that newly merged car company may achieve. Now, whenever you talk about internal economy scale, especially in your essay questions, I always suggest these two, which is purchasing and technical. I just believe the easiest to speak about, and you can write the most depth in the chain of analysis. So one, I'm just going to mention purchasing. So I'm going to say, as large a size of order, since, for example, now Fiat and Vauxhall, for example, if they buy the same tyres, they both might have bought 5,000 each previously. Now they can buy 10,000. Larger size of order gives them more bulk buying power, more power to negotiate the price down, therefore overall reducing their long run average cost. And that is that 2-mark done. So as larger size of order increases bargaining power, thus reducing long run average costs. Then lastly, and the last 2-marker for this section A, explain one likely concern that the EU competition authorities may have had about the merger. So at A level, pretty much with regards to regulation, you only really learn about consumers and prices. So the most time with regards like CMA, whatever this is, EU competition authorities, the main concern will be about consumers and the increased market share, probably able to exploit consumers with higher prices, less quality, things like that. But I'm just going to write consumers due to can be exploited with higher prices, and that would be more than enough for 2 marks. And that is 2 out of 2 marks and 5 out of 5 for question 5. And that is section A complete.